Canada's lakes and waterways are among our most treasured natural spaces, places where families gather, wildlife thrives, and traditions like fishing are passed from one generation to the next. But beneath the surface of these waters, a hidden danger persists. Each year, toxic lead fishing tackle is lost in lakes and rivers across Ontario and beyond. Small in size but devastating in impact, this material is often mistaken for food by wildlife, leading to poisoning, long-term suffering, and far too often death. Understanding why lead is so dangerous, how it moves through ecosystems, and why its effects can last for generations, requires scientific insight and first-hand experience. It also requires examining what happens when wildlife is exposed, why treatment is so difficult, and why prevention remains the most effective solution. To help shed light on these issues, we're joined by Emiko Wong, a veterinarian with over 30 years of experience and head scientific advisor for wildlife conservation at the Biodome in Montreal. As curator responsible for animal populations and species at risk recovery programs, she works at the intersection of science, animal health, and ecosystem protection, bringing a critical perspective on the preventable impacts of lead on wildlife, ecosystems, and ultimately human health.
My name is Emiko Wong, and I am a veterinarian, and I've been practicing veterinary medicine for almost 30 years now, which is kind of scary, but that's life. I've always been very, very passionate about the environment and environmental issues, starting from a very young age. I remember going to Fundy Bay's National Park when I was young in the university and doing a little bit of hiking. I remember taking some brochures from the national park and seeing how there was this regulation in the national areas for fish tackles in order to protect loons. And my first thought was, how come we're doing this just in national wildlife protected areas? And what's crazy about this situation is that even after 30 years, we're still in the same situation in Canada. So I was part of a lucky veterinary medicine student cohort where it was one of the first years where there was a very inspirational wildlife veterinarians who decided to put together a rotation that was called ecosystem health. So I had the privilege to go with experienced wildlife veterinarians and to go on the field. And what we did back in the day was we went canoeing and then we actually took samples of a zone of the soil to see what type of sample we would find and if we would find lead in it. And as we pulled out those carrots of soil and opened them up, we could definitely find a lot of lead bullets inside. The take-home message is that there is no safe level for lead. As soon as lead is in the environment, it can be ingested, it can contaminate the environment. So it's really a One Health issue. So if you're not familiar with the One Health approach, it's basically talking about how human health, animal health, and ecosystem health are all linked. Canadian Veterinary Medical Association has a position statement on the use of lead. So not just the fishing tackles, but also the lead used in hunting. So small caliber lead. This position statement, once again, asserts that we should find an alternative to lead. This committee does a lot of work trying to put together some position statements where we would recommend certain things or we would try to help certain regulatory issues like lead. And in these position statements, what we do is science-based. So we do a literature review to see all the species that are affected, all the science that has been accumulated so far in order to have a science evidence-based position statement. The loons specifically because they fish pretty large fish and they have a great ability to swallow, a large volume. So a fishing tackle is not that much of a big deal for them to actually swallow. But once they swallow this, it's going to be broken down into basically lead molecules that, because of the acid in the stomach that is naturally there to digest their prey, well, it's basically going to break down the lead, and the lead is going to go into the bloodstream. Once it goes into the bloodstream, then it's going to lead to serious problems. What we usually see is neurological problems. So oftentimes, not only is the animal very distraught and very weak, but also we're going to see some trouble maintaining equilibrium, some trouble holding the head up, etc. So you don't need that much lead to lead to these neurological issues and death in one bird. So once the bird dies, then afterwards it's going to decompose, and that the remaining lead is going to go back into the environment. So, it's not because the bird has died that the problem is over. The lead is still in the environment. Birds tend to swallow some small pieces of stone or basically gravel for grit, and in order to facilitate their digestion in their gizzard. And lead has a particular shine to it. It doesn't have that silvery shine. It's kind of a little bit faded shine, and this seems to attract particularly birds because it really looks like the small pebbles and grit that they would usually ingest for their digestion. So that's another thing that we have to consider, is that these birds have adapted thousands of years and to evolve, to thrive, to survive by better digesting, but we're actually causing them harm by putting in the environment something that's very similar. Once again, I can't stress enough that there is no safe level of lead. But even low levels of lead can lead to developmental issues in children, or even cardiovascular problems in adult human beings. And even case reports of children ingesting fishing tackles. And so this can lead to severe problems. And if it's not addressed immediately, it can even lead to death. So far, we've seen a history of things being more and more banned, and I think in 2026, our policymakers find a way to ban completely lead in all different sources. I don't know what sources are left besides the hunting and the fishing tackles, but whatever sources are left in batteries, etc., I think we're at the step where we should ban it entirely, since alternatives are available as well.
Sign the petition at fishleadfree.ca and help make lead-free fishing the norm across Ontario. Every signature counts.